"You can't be serious. Here? In our own home?" I whispered, my stomach churning as I watched the video on my phone. Parker and June tangled together in our bed, the very same bed we had shared for over 2 decades of marriage. My hands trembled, and I felt dizzy, like the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet. Parker, my husband of 23 years, and June, my supposed best friend, betrayed me in the most intimate way imaginable. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. How could they do this to me, to our family? The trust I had placed in them both shattered into a million pieces. As the video played on, I saw their smug expressions, as if they were getting away with something scandalous. They seemed to revel in the secrecy, the thrill of their forbidden liaison. It made me sick to my core. I thought back to our early days when Parker and I were so in love, so committed to each other. We had built a life together, a home, a family, and now it felt like it had all been a lie, a carefully constructed facade that he had meticulously maintained while carrying on this sordid affair. The worst part was that I had no idea how long this had been going on. Months, years. Had our entire marriage been a sham? The questions swirled in my mind, each one more painful than the last. I wanted to confront them, to scream in rage, but something held me back. A voice inside me whispered, "Not yet. Gather your strength. Bide your time." Because in that moment, I knew that this betrayal would not go unanswered. Parker and June would face the consequences of their actions, no matter what it took. As the shock of Parker's betrayal slowly wore off, I found myself replaying our marriage in my mind, searching for clues I had missed. Had he always been this callous and deceitful, or had something changed along the way? I thought back to the early days when we were young and in love, building our lives together. Parker had been attentive, caring, and seemingly devoted to me. But over time, something shifted. He became distant, consumed by his work, and our intimacy dwindled. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of his job and the pressures of raising a family. But now, with the ugly truth laid bare before me, I realized that his detachment had been a calculated deception, a way to create emotional distance while he carried on his sordid affair. One particular memory stood out, a weekend getaway we had taken just a few months ago, meant to rekindle the spark in our marriage. Parker had been aloof and distracted the entire time, constantly checking his phone and making excuses to slip away. At the time, I had convinced myself that he was just overwhelmed with work. Now I realized he was likely coordinating his rendezvous with June behind my back. The betrayal cut deep, and I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs sooner. But even more painful was the realization that the man I had loved and trusted for over 2 decades was nothing more than a skilled liar and manipulator. As I sat alone in our bedroom, surrounded by the remnants of our life together, I couldn't help but overhear Parker and June's voices drifting in from the living room. They were laughing and carrying on as if they didn't have a care in the world, reveling in their twisted little game. "Did you see the look on her face?" June cackled. "She's so oblivious, it's almost pathetic." Parker's reply was even more chilling. "She'll never catch on. I've got her wrapped around my finger." Their words stung like 1,000 knives, but they also ignited a fire within me. In that moment, I knew that I couldn't simply confront them and walk away. No, this betrayal demanded retribution, a reckoning for the years of lies and deceit they had inflicted upon me. After that fateful night when I discovered Parker and June's sordid affair, I knew I had to take action. But I also knew that confronting them directly would only give them a chance to spin more lies and manipulate the situation to their advantage. No, I needed to gather ironclad evidence, proof of their deceit that they couldn't deny or explain away. It was then that my new friend Kim, a tech-savvy neighbor, suggested installing hidden cameras around the house. At first, the idea made me uneasy. The thought of invading my own home's privacy felt wrong. But as the anger and hurt of Parker's betrayal festered, I realized it was the only way to catch them in the act and expose their duplicity once and for all. With Kim's help, I set up discreet cameras in the bedroom, living room, and even the backyard, anywhere they might think they were safe to carry on their twisted tryst. And sure enough, over the next few weeks, the footage began to pile up. There they were, tangled together on the couch I had picked out, sharing intimate moments on the patio where we used to host family barbecues. Each encounter felt like a slap in the face, a desecration of the life and home I had built with Parker. But as sickening as it was to watch, I knew I needed to document every single instance, every sordid detail. Because this time, there would be no denying the truth, no wriggling out of the consequences of their actions. One particularly damning video showed Parker and June in our kitchen, laughing and joking as if they didn't have a care in the world. "You know, Beth's going to lose her mind when she finds out," June giggled, leaning in to plant a kiss on Parker's lips. "Let her," Parker scoffed. "It's not like she'll ever have the guts to leave me." Their arrogance, their complete disregard for my feelings and the sanctity of our marriage made my blood boil. But I forced myself to remain calm, to keep collecting evidence until I had an undeniable case against them. As the weeks passed, the footage piled up, each video more damning than the last, and with each new recording, my resolve to make them pay for their betrayal grew stronger and stronger. They thought they were untouchable, that they could continue to make a mockery of our marriage and my trust without consequence. But they were wrong. So very, very wrong. As I continued to gather evidence of Parker and June's affair, I realized I needed someone with more technical expertise to help me take things to the next level. That's when I confided in my coworker Kyle, a whiz with computers and technology. At first, Kyle was hesitant to get involved in my personal drama, but as I showed him the damning videos and explained the depth of Parker's betrayal, he couldn't help but be drawn in. "This is some real messed up stuff, Beth," he said, shaking his head. "But I'm with you. Those two deserve to have the book thrown at them." With Kyle's help, we stepped up our surveillance game. He set up advanced recording equipment and even hacked into Parker's computer and phone, giving us access to his emails, texts, and financial records. What we uncovered was even more sickening than I could have imagined. Not only had Parker been carrying on this affair for over a year, but he had also been funneling money from our joint accounts to fund his rendezvous with June. "Look at this," Kyle said, pulling up a spreadsheet on his laptop. "He's been siphoning off thousands every month, calling it business expenses." My hands trembled as I scrolled through the damning evidence. All those fancy dinners and weekend getaways he claimed were work-related. They were really just cover-ups for his trysts with June. But what really made my blood boil were the texts and emails they had exchanged, so casual and cavalier about their deceit. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." One message from June read, "Beth's working late, so we'll have the whole place to ourselves." "Perfect," Parker replied. "I'll bring the wine and meet you in our bedroom." Our bedroom, the bed we had shared for over 2 decades, the same one I had discovered their sordid affair in. The sheer disrespect and lack of remorse was staggering. As the evidence mounted, so did my determination to make them pay. Kyle became my co-conspirator, my ally in this quest for retribution. And together we hatched a plan to bring Parker and June's twisted charade crashing down around them. "They think they're so clever," Kyle said, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "Let's show them just how wrong they are." With that, we set our trap, laying the groundwork for the ultimate confrontation. A reckoning that would expose their lies and deceit for all to see. With Kyle's help, the evidence against Parker and June continued to pile up. But I knew I needed more than just damning videos and financial records. I needed allies, people who could corroborate my suspicions and provide testimony to the depth of Parker's deception. It started with small conversations, casual mentions of Parker's odd behavior over the past year. My friend Tanya confided that she had noticed a change in him too, always glued to his phone and making flimsy excuses for his absences. "I just chalked it up to work stress," she said with a shrug. "But now that you mention it..." As I dug deeper, more and more people came forward with similar stories. Parker blowing off long-standing plans, acting distracted and distant, even disappearing for hours at a time without explanation. Even our next-door neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, had noticed strange comings and goings from our house at odd hours. "I just figured it was a repair person or something," she said, her eyes wide with realization. With each new testimony, the picture became clearer. Parker had been carefully orchestrating his double life, lying and manipulating everyone around him to cover his tracks. The sheer audacity of his deceit was staggering. But perhaps the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Kyle's friend Daniel, a lawyer he had consulted about my legal options. "Based on what you've shown me, your husband has been engaging in blatant financial infidelity," Daniel said grimly, poring over the records of Parker's siphoned funds. "He's been committing fraud and embezzlement right under your nose." The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. Not only had Parker betrayed me emotionally and physically, but he had also been bleeding our shared finances dry to fund his sordid affair. As the anger and hurt welled up inside me, Daniel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry, Beth. We're going to make sure he pays for every single lie, every stolen dime." With Daniel's guidance, I began taking steps to protect myself and my assets. I froze our joint accounts, changed the locks on the house, and even consulted a private investigator to gather additional evidence. With each new piece of the puzzle, my resolve grew stronger. Parker and June thought they could continue living their lives of deceit and betrayal without consequence. But they were wrong, dead wrong. I was done being the meek, oblivious wife. It was time for them to face the reckoning they so richly deserved. With Kyle's technical wizardry and our carefully laid trap, the moment of reckoning finally arrived. I had orchestrated a scenario where Parker and June would be caught red-handed, their sordid affair on full display, leaving them no room for denial or excuses. It was a Friday night, and I had made sure to let Parker know I would be working late at the office. Like clockwork, he took the bait, inviting June over for one of their clandestine rendezvous. Hidden in the shadows of our bedroom, I watched with a mixture of disgust and grim satisfaction as they stumbled in, already tangled in each other's embrace. They didn't even bother to close the door, so brazen in their betrayal. "Finally, we have the place all to ourselves," June purred, her hands roaming over Parker's body with sickening familiarity. Parker chuckled, that same smug laugh that had haunted me since I first discovered their affair. "Yeah, Beth's gonna be stuck at work for hours. We can take our time." My jaw clenched at the sound of his voice, the casual way he dismissed my existence while reveling in his deceit. But I forced myself to remain calm, to wait for the perfect moment to spring my trap. As they tumbled onto our bed, lost in their lustful haze, I gave Kyle the signal. Suddenly, the room was bathed in bright light, and a booming voice echoed all around us. "Surprise, you lying, cheating snakes!" Parker and June froze, their eyes wide with terror as they realized they had been caught, their naked bodies on full display. But the true horror was yet to come. With a few keystrokes, Kyle activated the video feed, projecting their every lewd act onto the walls around them. Their own voices, laced with contempt and mockery, filled the air, leaving no doubt as to the depravity of their actions. "You see, Parker, June," I said, my voice dripping with disdain, "I know everything. Every sordid detail, every stolen moment, every penny you've taken from me." Parker tried to sputter out some feeble excuse, but I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Save it. Your lies end here. My silence ends now." The looks on their faces, the sheer terror and realization that their twisted game was up, was almost worth the pain they had put me through. Almost. As I stood there, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, I felt a newfound sense of power, of control. They had underestimated me, thinking I was just some naive fool who would never catch on. But they were wrong. And now they would face the consequences of their actions, the full weight of their deceit crashing down upon them. The reckoning had begun. The fallout from that explosive confrontation was swift and brutal. Parker and June's lives came crashing down around them, their carefully constructed lies and deceptions laid bare for all to see. I wasted no time in taking decisive action. With the help of Kyle and his lawyer friend Daniel, I filed for divorce and initiated legal proceedings against Parker, freezing our joint accounts and assets to ensure he couldn't squirrel away any more money. "You're not going to get away with bleeding me dry, you lying snake!" I snarled at him as the court orders were served. Parker, who had always prided himself on his successful career, found himself in freefall. The evidence of his embezzlement and fraud was overwhelming, and within weeks he was unceremoniously fired from his cushy executive position. "How could you do this to me?" he pleaded, his once smug demeanor now replaced by sniveling desperation. After everything we had together, I laughed bitterly in his face. You threw away everything we had the moment you decided to betray me with that snake, June. Speaking of June, she was facing her own reckoning. Once the sordid details of our affair became public knowledge, she found herself a social pariah, ostracized from her friend group, and forced to resign from her prestigious job in shame. "You've ruined me!" She screamed at me during one particularly heated encounter. "I'll never be able to show my face in this town again." "Good," I spat back, unflinching. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before stabbing your best friend in the back." As Parker and June's worlds crumbled around them, I found myself surrounded by a newfound support system, friends and allies who had rallied to my side, appalled by the depths of the betrayal. "You're so strong, Beth," Tanya said, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. "I don't know how you've kept it together through all of this." But the truth was, I had never felt stronger or more in control. With each legal victory, each public humiliation Parker and June suffered, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. They had thought they could lie, cheat, and steal without consequence, but in the end, their arrogance and deceit had been their downfall. As Parker faced the very real possibility of jail time for his financial crimes, and June wallowed in her self-imposed exile, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. They had made their bed, and now they were lying in it, quite literally, in some cases. The reckoning was complete, and I was finally free. With Parker and June's lives in shambles and the divorce proceedings finally behind me, I found myself standing on the precipice of a new beginning. The weight of their betrayal had been lifted, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Of course, the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. Rebuilding my life after decades of lies and deceit would be a challenge. But as I looked around at the unwavering support system that had rallied around me, I knew I didn't have to go it alone. Tanya, bless her heart, was always just a phone call away, ready with a listening ear or a bottle of wine, whichever the situation called for. "You're one tough cookie, Beth," she'd say with a wink, "but even tough cookies need a break sometimes." And then there was Kyle, my partner in crime during those dark days of gathering evidence and plotting my revenge. What had started as a purely professional relationship had blossomed into something deeper, something intriguing. "You know, I never thought I'd be the kind of guy who gets involved in crazy revenge schemes," he joked one night over drinks. "But I have to admit, watching you take down those two snakes was pretty damn satisfying." His admiration was evident, and I couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement at the prospect of what could blossom between us. After years of living a lie with Parker, the idea of a fresh, honest connection was both thrilling and terrifying. As for Parker and June, their lives had become a cautionary tale of what happens when greed and hubris take over. Parker found himself drowning in legal fees and facing the very real possibility of jail time for his financial crimes. The once high-flying executive was now a disgraced pariah, his reputation in tatters. June, meanwhile, had become a virtual recluse, her so-called friends having long since abandoned her in the wake of the scandal. Rumor had it she had even resorted to changing her name and leaving town, hoping to outrun the shame and stigma of her actions. But as satisfying as it was to see them reap the consequences of their betrayal, I knew dwelling on their downfall wouldn't do me any good. It was time to focus on my own path forward, on rediscovering the person I was before Parker's lies had nearly consumed me. I threw myself into new hobbies and activities, finding joy in the simple things I had neglected for far too long. Painting classes, hiking groups, even joining a book club. Each new experience was a step towards reclaiming the life that had been so callously stolen from me. And as the months passed and the wounds began to heal, I found myself becoming an advocate for others who had faced similar betrayals. Speaking out, sharing my story, and offering guidance to those navigating the treacherous waters of infidelity and broken trust. It was empowering, cathartic, and a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we all have the strength to persevere and forge new paths for ourselves. As for me, I was just getting started.